Hi everyone, it's Catherine. Welcome back to my channel. Today is going to be a fairly chill video. I'm going to do some fun hand lettering practice and give you some idea of how I deal with large expanses of paper that don't have any sort of guide to them, which you can see now actually. I'm just taking a pencil and I'm drawing in my own guidelines. And I kind of got this video started a lot faster than I expected. Um, so yeah, I'm just drawing in some guidelines. This paper happens to be 9 by 12. So long ways, I'm drawing a line every 2 inches. And this is because the quote that I chose to letter today is a fairly long one. And so I knew I would need several lines. So rather than my usual just divide the paper into quarters and hope for the best. I went with every 2 inches to give myself a little bit more even spacing, or at least a little more hope of possibly spacing it evenly. And then I just drew one line down the middle. Right. So now I'm just taking my Tombow markers. I'm using the Tombow Dual Brush Pens. And I recently attended a really fun week worth of workshops called, funnily enough, Workshop Week. It was hosted by the Happy Ever Crafter, and it was fantastic. One of the things that I learned how to do during this week was to blend Tombow markers. And so I'm having some fun here practicing what I've learned, and also I wanted to experiment and try lettering sort of freehand rather than tracing. I'm feeling fairly confident. My lettering, I've noticed in my journal, has gotten a lot neater and generally a lot nicer. And as I've practiced with that, I've gotten better control over my brush pens. So I just wanted to play around today and kind of see what I could do, see where I could improve. I mean, it's practice. So if you are watching this hoping for a full-on tutorial, that is not what this is. If you've seen any of my other art adventures, you will know that I am not that good. And here I'm just fiddling with my ring light. It seemed to be having some problems. So anyway, I'm just going ahead and writing in my quote in the lightest color brush pen that I have. And the quote that I chose today was one that I found, and I just really like it. It really speaks to the way that my family in particular views weeds, both literally and figuratively. And the quote is by Ella Wheeler Wilcox, and it is, "A weed is but an unloved flower." And I just love that quote. I think it's, again, really appropriate to the way that my family views literal weeds. If you go out in our yard, you'll find, I'm sure, many weeds that we just let grow because we like them. But also a little more philosophically, how we view sort of just being different, not being the perfect sort of hothouse rose, um, but just kind of being yourself, being a wildflower. That idea of resilience is something that, again, my family we always talk about, especially my mom and myself. We love the resilience of weeds and how tough they are and how hard it is to get rid of them. Again, just more philosophically, it's a lovely idea. So this quote was really fun. I liked it for its personal meaning to me and my family. And then also it gave me a chance to practice some lettering in a little more detail. So I'm doing a combination here of script and more like bubble letters. So you may have noticed my bubble letters are not fantastic. Definitely need to work on those, but they're better than they used to be. So, progress. And I am using hot pressed watercolor paper. I will link my supplies down below. This paper in particular came in an Art Snacks box, and I didn't think I was going to get all that much use out of it. I tried it when I got it with the gouache that came in the box also, and I tested out a little bit of watercolor on there as well, and I just didn't care for it as like a watercolor paper. But at that workshop, I learned that wow. At that workshop, I learned that you should really use either Bristol or smooth hot pressed watercolor paper when you're using these types of brush pens, because it's nicer for the tips. You won't fray your brush pens nearly as easily on this sort of smoother paper, and because these are water-based markers, it also helps keep them from bleeding through the paper and pilling the paper and all that kind of stuff. So yeah, that's why I used the hot press paper. And it turns out I actually really like this paper for lettering. I think it's really nice. So I may get more use out of this paper than I expected to get. And we're coming to the last word here. I don't love the way flowers came out as I've looked at it and worked with it. I think I could have done it differently. I definitely could have spaced it better. But then also, I rather wish I had just chosen a slightly different font and just gone a slightly different way with it. It ended up looking kind of squished and awkward, and I'm not thrilled with it. But again, this is just practice, so it is what it is. And now I'm just erasing my guidelines. I don't need them anymore. I have my base letters down, so I can get rid of the pencil, and any other decorations that I might want to add later, I don't need to worry about, because I will then have the actual words to use as guides. So I can get rid of all of those pencil marks, which is really nice. It leaves the whole piece a lot less cluttered as I start to do my blending and layering. Now, one thing about this particular process, it was very dark this day. We were about to get some thunderstorms, and so the skies had gotten really dark and really gloomy, and so I didn't have a whole lot of light coming in through the windows. And as you saw earlier, I was attempting to use a ring light, which possibly helped with the video. I'm noticing as I'm watching it back that the video is very bright, but the actual room where I was, to my eyes, was actually quite dark. There really was not enough light to see easily, and so I'm trying to do this, and my eyes were really getting tired. My eyes kept crossing, and I would stay, especially with the darker letters, and when I got to the darker parts of the letters, I would be looking at it and just, I don't know if you know this feeling, but when your eyes just start to like almost blur, and they almost feel like maybe they want to pop out of your head. It was bad. So I kept going. I really didn't want to turn the overhead light on, because the way my camera is set up, it's my phone, but the way my phone is set up on the tripod to record, the overhead light creates this giant shadow in the middle of the piece, which I don't really see as I'm working, but I see very, very strongly on the video when I watch it back, and I didn't think that would be pleasant for you all to watch. So yeah, I kind of went a little, I made it a little harder on myself than it really needed to be, because I wanted decent lighting, and I really need to figure out my lighting situation. There has to be a happy medium, but so far I'm not finding it. So I'm starting with purple, and I just I'm working one letter at a time, going over each letter first with the lightest color that I initially did that letter in. And then I go about halfway to maybe 2/3 of the way up the letter with the medium tone, and then take that lightest color again and drag that medium color up and out so that they start to blend together a bit. And then after that, I'll do the same thing with the darkest color, the darkest pen. But instead of going 2/3 of the way up the letter, I'll then go 1/4 to 1/3 of the way up that letter. And that just helps to blend everything out. I bring the medium tone back into, I know I'm using these terms all wrong. All of you art majors can please correct me. But I use that medium color to drag the darker color up, and then if I feel like it's still not quite blended enough, I'll then take the lightest color and go over the whole letter and again just sort of drag all that color through so that hopefully it mixes. I don't think I got a perfectly seamless blend on these, but I actually really like the way they turned out, especially some of the green ones where it looks like the green is kind of jagged and like mixing together. It all feels very weedy and very wild, and I like that about it. And I think it was right about now, as I was starting to blend in the unloved letters, that I realized I'd forgotten to do Anne above, in the line above. I got is but and completely forgot about Anne. Poor Anne. So after I finish working with unloved, I'll go back and do Anne, and then I can move on to flower. And this is one thing when I do this kind of project, when I do this kind of practice, I try to just keep in mind that I am still practicing, and so things are not going to come out perfect, and I've gotten a lot better about accepting that and being okay with that. Um, and also just I try to really enjoy the process now, more than focusing on the result. And in enjoying the process, I'm finding that I'm getting better results, partly because I'm practicing more, I'm doing it more often, because I'm not focusing on my insecurities of, oh no, every time I try to write pretty letters, they come out all uneven. Well, okay, sometimes they do, but instead of worrying about that, I try to think of ways that I can hopefully make them a little bit more even. So for me, that was drawing some guidelines. And I'm realizing as I have done this that I actually needed even more guidelines. Perhaps my letters, my words, and especially that last word, that flowers, or flower word, would have been more evenly spaced if I had then also drawn an extra guideline so that I divided my page lengthwise into 4. So having guidelines every 2 inches horizontally, but then also having the page vertically divided into 4 may have actually helped me to make my letters, my words themselves more even. And maybe it wouldn't have, but it's something that I will try next time I do this. Because, especially if you think about only having essentially a straw to look through and really not being able to see the entire paper, not being able to see the entire composition at one time, and not really having that ability to see where you were and where you're going at once as a way to sort of anchor your work. It's difficult to make things even, and even as I look at it now, I'm realizing that the only letter or word that is really right in the middle is A. And that's because it's one letter, so it was easy enough to just follow that middle guideline. So I really needed a few more guidelines vertically to make it actually effective, to make them an effective and really useful tool. The key that I also have learned with blending Tombows, and I'm sure this applies to any water-based marker, but especially with the Tombows, is to work quickly, or at least as quickly as you can, and to work while everything is still wet. The person who led the workshop also had a paintbrush and some water, but I wasn't quite that brave and didn't think that I really needed it. And maybe in some places I could have used it and it might have helped to smooth things out, but I really was nervous about mixing paintbrushes and brush pens, and I was just a little too nervous to actually go that far. But I like the way this turned out. And I'm going to take a little bit of a break as I finish up the lettering. Had to go feed the dogs and then also feed the humans in the house. We were all hungry, so took a break, got some food for the dogs, got some food for the family, and thankfully the sun came out, so the lighting for me was slightly better, not by a whole lot, but slightly. And so now I took a minute to decide what I wanted to do for sort of decoration or embellishment. And I didn't add a ton, but I did want to add a few cute little flowers to either side at the top. So I'm just drawing some circular guidelines, and I learned how to do the flowers in another workshop from Workshop Week, and that was from Shayda Campbell, and I will link her channel down below. I would also link to if I can find it, if I can find her, I will link the woman who did the Tombow brush blending as well. But I'll also link Shayda's channel down below. She has a ton of great tutorials on drawing flowers and painting flowers and all of that kind of stuff, and she makes it feel really approachable, which for someone who is easily intimidated by art, approachable is good. That's me, by the way. If you weren't sure who I was talking about, I'm easily intimidated by art, so it's good to have someone make it feel approachable and easy. So I'm drawing my guides, figuring out where I want my flowers, and then I'm just drawing in some loose petals to kind of show myself where my flowers are going to go and get an idea of what they're going to look like, so I know that if I like them or not, if I want to keep going with them or not, or if I need to erase anything. I also attempted to put some leaves in. I don't actually like the way those leaves turned out. I don't really like where they are. So you'll see later, after I get the flowers drawn in pen, that I do end up erasing those leaves, and I sort of freehand the leaves in a different spot, and I think they turned out better. So now I'm grabbing my, I believe this is the 05 Pigma Micron, and just outlining, moving anything that needs moving as I'm doing it in ink now. I'm just following my guidelines. I do add a few extra petals here and there, kind of move things around, but for the most part, just very simple flowers with 5 petals. They kind of remind me of pansies, but with too many flowers, or I'm sorry, too many petals. But I like these. I think they turned out kind of cute. And this is another point where the light was just kind of getting dim. It was well after supper by this time, and daylight was just starting to fade, and my eyes again were just getting really tired, and those really sharp black lines were not making it any easier. While I absolutely did not do this for this video because I wanted it to look nice on camera, that is something to keep in mind too. You know, if you're really struggling to see, or you're really struggling with whatever adaptations you have to make for yourself, you know, try something different. Try moving to a different area of the house, try using a different table or adjusting the angle. In my case, what would have significantly helped would have simply been to turn on the light, which naturally I was too stubborn to do. So, you know, take my advice, not necessarily follow my example, but it's just one of those things that it's important to know when you're struggling and when that struggle is getting to be too much. And I knew I was nearly done, so I just kind of kept going. Since, again, I just really didn't want that awkward shadow. But if I had stopped and given myself permission to turn on the light, I would have had a much easier time of the entire project, and especially getting towards the end when my eyes were just really tired of being in too dimly lit a room and staring at too many dark shapes and dark lines. And it was just getting all to be really exhausting and just a little bit too much. But again, I knew I was nearly done, so whatever. So now I'm just doing some shading. I'm using the 005 Pigma Micron fine liner for this. And I really like the delicate shading and the extra control that that gives me. And this is done. I really hope you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please give it a thumbs up and hit subscribe to see more from me, and hit the bell if you want to be notified whenever I post new videos. Thanks everyone. Have a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Bye.